Hello, my friends. There is a lot of news today, so make sure to watch the video until the end. And today we'll begin with the situation surrounding the negotiations and the agreement. The White House said that everyone is optimistic and everything is going according to plan. Ukraine is engaged in productive negotiations, but there are still a few points of disagreement. The White House said Donald Trump's spokesperson, Caroline Leavitt, told the reporters that the talks aimed at ending the war in Ukraine were productive, but there are still several items that need to be finalized. She noted that the updated plan will be presented to Russia again. The president wants an agreement to be reached and the war to end as soon as possible, Leavitt said, adding that Trump is putting pressure on both sides. So today, everyone is waiting for the final decision on this agreement, and afterward it will be passed on to the Russians. President Zelensky also commented on the current stage of the agreement.
As of now, after Geneva, there are fewer points, not 28 anymore, and many important things have been taken into account in this framework. There's still work to do together. It's very difficult to finalize the documents. Everything must be done properly. And we appreciate that much of the world is ready to help us. The American side is constructive. Yesterday, there were meetings almost all day long. It was difficult, extremely detailed work. Today, the entire day is dedicated to coordination with our partners in Europe. I've already spoken with the presidents of Finland and Lithuania, with the president of the European Council, and with the prime ministers of Norway and Spain. I thank everyone for their clear and sincere support, for all the information that helps us. Ukraine is not alone, and that matters. Our team has already reported on the new draft of the steps, and it's truly the right approach. Sensitive issues, very sensitive issues, I will discuss with President Trump.
As we can see, Zelensky said that the number of points is no longer 28, there are fewer now. And the White House has said that they don't want to help Ukraine anymore, while Europe is buying weapons specifically for Ukraine.
People. President Trump stopped the funding of this war, but the United States is still sending or selling a big amount of weapons to NATO. We cannot do that forever, and the president wants this war to end. He is a peacetime president. That's what he's pursuing, and today he remains optimistic and hopeful, and I know our teams are working around the clock to try to get this deal to an end.
But everyone understands that Trump simply doesn't want Ukraine to defeat Russia. And a U.S. Armed Forces veteran said that both the U.S. and NATO countries have let Ukraine down. This is a post by a U.S. military veteran who spent the last 3 years in Ukraine. The U.S. has hundreds of Abrams tanks sitting in boneyards, and Ukraine received only 31. The US has thousands of M113s parked in storage lots collecting dust, and it's cheaper to ship them overseas than to keep maintaining them. The US has stockpiles of vehicles, guns, F-16 aircraft, and equipment mothballed across deserts and depots, gear that will never be used by the American military again. All of this could have been delivered immediately at scale in 2022. It wasn't. If victory had truly been the goal, the West would have emptied storage depots, reopened production lines, and flooded the battlefield with everything needed to break Russia's military. But that is not what happened. But never let Ukraine actually win. And everyone understands this. We're being lied to. They don't want to tell us the truth. And Trump is saying he supposedly has too few missiles, and the US needs this equipment for itself. But all this is being said only so that Ukraine will sign a capitulation and Russia will come out of this war as a winner. It's very sad. But I think Trump would definitely look better and he would get the Nobel Prize he won so much if he helped Ukraine, and then could say that he gave everything for victory over Russia. Then he'd be celebrating that victory the way he loves to, but in reality, he's helping Russia. Friends, be sure to write your opinion in the comments. What do you think about all this? Meanwhile, the Europeans, who are even afraid to send long range weapons, are saying that they're not okay with the US plan. A number of points in the peace agreement on Ukraine are unacceptable for Europe, said Tusk. Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk stated that the European Union leaders who took part in an informal meeting in Angola held a serious discussion about peace talks regarding Ukraine, agreeing that the 28 points of the plan proposed by the US and Russia need to be revised because some of the proposals are unacceptable for Europe, and Tusk noted that it's especially important that no agreement undermine the security of Poland or Europe as a whole. As we can see, they're not worrying about Ukraine, they're worrying about Poland and Europe. So basically, same story as always. Now, let's move on to the situation along the front line. And because things they are catastrophic, and we'll start with a statement made by a soldier about this. While everyone is endlessly discussing the negotiations and every point one by one, the front hasn't gone anywhere, and the situation there is only moving in a worse direction. In some areas, without urgent changes, things will become critical. Honestly, I don't remember the Russians advancing this fast for a long time. The issue now isn't about losing specific settlements, it's about the Russians significantly improving their operational position across entire directions. And as for the points of the agreement, whatever they are, I'm sure they simply won't be followed, neither by Russia nor in terms of the security guarantees from the West. And indeed, today we can see that Myrnohrad is practically encircled. The Russians have already started entering Huliaipole, Kostiantynivka, and Lyman, and Siversk and Kupiansk are all already partially captured. And with each passing day, the situation keeps getting worse. So let's move to the front line, and we'll start with the Dobropillia direction. Here, the Russians are assaulting Suvorove, Volodymyrivka, and Sofiivka. And according to the latest reports, the situation here is deteriorating. And the Russians are already being eliminated in Shahova. So the gray zone here is definitely very large. For now, we are waiting for official confirmations, and most likely things will change for the worse in the near future, especially considering that some troops from this direction have already been redeployed to stabilize the situation in the Pokrovsk direction, and that could seriously impact the situation near Dobropillia. In the Pocrosk direction, the situation is also difficult. The Russians are assaulting Rodinsk, Myrnohrad, and the village of Rivne, and are breaking through on the western flank. Meanwhile, the Russians have published another video showing them working through the center of Pokrovsk. It's important to note that there is no fog, although it is raining. At the same time, the Russians are moving through the city center, and there are no strikes on them, nor is there any sound of shelling in the city. So the situation is fairly quiet and you can't hear any hits or gunfire. And here is what military journalist Yulia Kryenko writes about the situation. Russian soldiers and their propaganda media are once again showing themselves supposedly walking freely through the center of Pokrovsk. Unfortunately, the weather isn't on the side of the defense forces, but the Russians are taking advantage of it. Under heavy fog, they continue moving into the city. Our troops are destroying them with drones. In some neighborhoods, there is close quarters fighting, but our forces are still present in Pokrovsk. There is no clear front line there. It runs between apartment blocks and courtyards, shifting each time, sometimes in our direction, sometimes back toward the Russians. But there is also good news. Ukrainian Armed Forces soldiers have been spotted on the outskirts of Pokrovsk, basically on the highway leading toward Pavlograd. Earlier, Russians had placed their flag there. This means the Ukrainian military is near Pokrovsk and maybe carrying out counterattacks, since there have already been statements about that. It's also important to point out that for almost 2 weeks now, we've seen that the situation in Myrnohrad has been very bad, practically surrounded from all sides. And yet, for some reason, the Russians still haven't managed to capture the city. This suggests that the Ukrainian forces are inflicting very heavy losses on them, but for now, we'll have to wait and see how events unfold. Now, let's move to the Novopavlivka direction. Here, the Russians are assaulting the town, pushing toward the outskirts, fighting for Dachne, and trying to break through beyond Zeleny High. But they haven't achieved any success, and over the past day, the front line hasn't changed. In the direction of the village of Pokrovsk in the Dnipropetrovsk region, activity is very high. The Russians are pushing through in the areas of Sosnivka, Novoselivka, Oleksiivka, and Novoalexandrivka, but so far the front line isn't moving any further, and the Ukrainian forces continue to repel the attacks. In the Huliaipole direction, it's a disaster. So here the Russians are pushing toward the village of Preluke, and according to the latest information, they have captured the village of Zatysha and are already breaking into Huliaipole with sabotage groups. They are also storming Zeleny High, but over the past day there have been no newly confirmed changes on the front line. In the Zaporizhia direction, the Russians are assaulting Stepove, Stepnohirsk, and Primorsk. But even the Russians themselves report that the Ukrainian forces are destroying all their groupings there, and so far the Russians are unable to advance any further. So the front line here remains without any major changes. In the Kherson direction, the Russians are trying to break through near the Antonivsky Bridge, but they have no success, and the front line hasn't changed in the past 24 hours. Now let's move to the Kostantinivka direction. Here, the Russians are not reducing their activity. They are assaulting the village of Maiske and pushing beyond Chasiv Yar. They are attacking Pretechene, the outskirts of Kostantinivka, Ivano-Pilla, Klebenbyk, trying to break through to the village of Boristok and the area beyond Rusin Yar. But there is still no confirmed loss of Ivano-Pilla. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian forces are publishing new videos every day showing Russian forces being destroyed there. In the Siversk direction, the situation continues to deteriorate. Today, Ukrainian forces report that already half of the city is in the gray zone. The Russians continue to increasingly penetrate Siversk and consolidate their forces. As of now, roughly half of the city is in the gray zone. Additionally, assaults on Yampil and Dronivka continue, but so far there are no new confirmed changes along the front line. In the Lyman direction, the Russians are assaulting Zarichne and Novomikhailivka and pushing toward the village of Seredny. According to unconfirmed reports, the Russians have already captured the village of Stavky. They are also concentrating reserves for further attacks on Lyman itself, so the situation here is very serious. Furthermore, according to Russian statements, Novoselivka has already been captured. They have already released videos showing flags in the village. However, I cannot yet confirm the loss of the village because the general staff hasn't officially verified it. For now, we need to wait and see how events develop. In any case, the front here is very active and not moving in our favor. The gray zone now practically reaches Yarova and Svятогірськ. In the Borova direction, the Russians are assaulting Novoyegorivka, but activity here is minimal and there are no changes. In the Kupiansk direction, the Russians are assaulting Petropavlivka and pushing into the area of Stepova Novoselivka. However, the Ukrainian Armed Forces report that the situation has effectively been stabilized here. Russian advances in Kupiansk and across the entire sector have almost completely stalled. The Russians have lost the initiative they held at the end of this summer. Now let's move on to the situation in the Veliki Burluk area. The Russians are not conducting any new assaults here, and for now the situation remains stable. In Vovchansk, fighting continues. The Russians are attempting to storm the village of Leman, but they have made no gains, and over the past 24 hours, the front line hasn't changed. In the Sumy region, the Russians have made no gains, but they're still trying to break through, even across the border. For now, however, the situation remains stable. Unfortunately, due to the ongoing war, Ukraine continues to suffer losses, and sadly, they are significant. The media are openly reporting that the Ministry of Defense has handed over 1.5 hectares of land in Lviv for a new military cemetery. The Minister of Defense transferred 1.5 hectares in Lviv for a military cemetery. Minister Shmyhal announced the new plot directly borders the Lychakiv cemetery, where space is already running out. At the same time, shelling of Ukrainian territory continues. Yesterday, there were reports of a Shahed drone strike on a residential building in Odessa. Overnight, Russia again carried out a massive attack on Ukraine with cruise missiles and Shahed drones, once again showing that you cannot negotiate with Russia and that their military potential must be completely destroyed. And Ukraine is gradually addressing this. Yesterday's strikes hit Taganrog, reportedly targeting an aviation factory. There were also reports of damage to a residential building in Novorossiysk and in Gelendzhik. preliminary information indicates that a Russian missile targeted a residential building defended by air defense. So overall, the fight continues. Friends, share your thoughts on this in the comments. And that's all from me. So please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on all the latest news. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye bye.